Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because I have Helaina Cappel on the line. Say hello.
Hi, everybody. Hi,
Hey.
Edo.
And Helena is the owner of KTBG Games as well as Burnt Island Games. And that is to say, takes care of all the stuff the creative people don't really dive into. Is that how you put it just before we got on?
That's exactly how I put it. I do some creative stuff also, but I do every single thing that the creative people don't like to do. So all the logistical stuff. Yeah.
And there's a lot of that. I'm pretty
There's
familiar
a
with it as
lot.
well.
Yes, there is a lot of that. And yes, I know you are very familiar. You do all the stuff.
I do. I work with creative folks as well, but I certainly do a lot of the not creative work.
Right.
And so I am excited to talk to you because I always enjoy talking to you. But on this occasion, it's a different type of conversation. You know, we had an interview in the past, and I'll link it in the description, which I think was a little bit more, how'd you get into gaming? What are you doing? Launching your different lines of games. But with this one, I wanted to talk a little bit more about your latest Kickstarter, In Too Deep, which you recently canceled, right? So you kicked off the campaign, and you were pretty close to funding. Like with it, I mean, you were going to fund, and then ultimately, you and your team decided to cancel it on the second day of the campaign, right?
Right.
So the reason and thank you for coming on to talk about it. Not the most fun, but I think creators don't necessarily or don't often get this side of get some insight into this decision. And
Mhm.
so I'm glad you're willing to chat about it a little bit. So I think maybe to kick things off, um, just before getting into like the exact rationale and situation of the cancellation, maybe you could go in a little background on In Too Deep, when you started it, who was working on it, just to give some people perspective. I'll link the unfortunately canceled campaign in the description. But it's a pretty cool. I've not played, but sci-fi game. But perhaps you can give some more just overview on it.
So the game itself was designed originally by Josh Cappel, who is my partner, and he designed it about 12 years ago and entered it into I don't think it's around anymore, but at the Board Game Design Forum, they had monthly contest, and whatever the contest was for, he just designed the bare bones of what this game is, and he won the design challenge. Um, and Daryl Chow, who is the now co-designer, came to him and said, "Hey, I have some ideas about how to like actually make this happen." So you can imagine 12 years of designing a game. It had been signed by another company. I believe the company is called Common Man Games. We don't really know what's going on with that company at this point, but obviously it was let go by them.
Sure,
And
sure.
when it was let go, I was like, Josh, we need to make this game because it's really amazing. And it's different than anything that we've ever played. And the theme was really fantastic. It was one that we wanted to cover for a long time.
And
And
this
so,
theme is like, because I thought it was interesting when I was watching the video. This theme is like basically trying to infiltrate a syndicate or the bad guys by hacking into the brains of the bad guys
that's
and
correct.
like participating in their crimes and then like getting tainted by a life in crime pseudo like
Well, the idea is you're a secret agent. You've been hired by this agency to infiltrate the syndicate, and the goal of the game is kind of twofold. One, you're trying to take them down. Two, sometimes you get into a little too deep and you start feeling connected to the syndicate and start doing things because you want to do them. So there's some moral decisions that need to be made in the game, whether or not you're going to work for the bad guys or you're going to take them down. But that doesn't really unfold till sometime in the game because you're starting the game wanting to take down the syndicate. And so that sort of goes along with the idea of our first Burnt Island game, which was Endeavor, where you had to make moral decisions as well. And I liked that connection between the two games. I think it's important for a company to have an identity, and that is a good piece that I think we were bringing. Anyway, so the game was designed. We decided we wanted to do it about a year ago. We sat down with it. It wasn't quite ready yet. We were supposed to launch in February. That was the date. Couldn't get the art done because the game itself wasn't complete at that moment. I can't bring a game to Kickstarter that is not complete. I don't.
Yes, some people certainly try.
Well, yes, they do. They do. And I mean, you know, if you look back to the origins of Kickstarter, that's basically what it was for creators to bring something to life that didn't exist yet. But where we are right now in the industry, I didn't feel right bringing it where it was to Kickstarter. So that was February, and then COVID. And we were all of a sudden hit with, well, now we can't play test this with the people that we've been playing with. And so it went longer. We finally figured out how to get it on Tabletop Simulator. We got the play testing going. The art came in at the time, basically, that we were finished designing the game or developing the game.
And the art looks fantastic, by the way.
It is amazing. The colors, the broad brush strokes, just it's really, really fantastic. We are very, very happy with the work that Dominic Mayer has done for the game. He really brought our vision to life. So it was ready for Kickstarter. So we thought about a month ago, and we started putting the Kickstarter together. And having spent so much time on making this game right for Kickstarter, there were a lot of things that we ended up not doing right for the campaign itself. And that's sort of where we were on that second day. It didn't go as expected, I think, because, you know, now in hindsight, there were a few things I think that we missed.
So with that background, let's talk about it a little bit. And you know, obviously, in addition, you know, it has a lot of unique looking components. You're obviously doing miniatures here. Mm-hmm. You had a pretty high polished video, so a lot of things were looking pretty strong. But just before getting into what you could have done better or that part of the conversation, which I think is the most interesting for folks. But in terms of that, like a lot of people sometimes struggle with well, you set your goal at, it was like 33 US, but I guess it was 45 Canadian. Yes. But you set it at 45, you canceled it at 42, you were going to hit your goal within the first 2 days of however long campaign. When you're saying it wasn't going as expected, I mean, so what was the trajectory, or like what would have been a good day two? Like where were you guys, like at what point were you like, oh, this isn't looking like we were expecting? Or because you obviously had, and like I apologize, but like Goblin of the Mountain King or like Mountain of the Mountain, I don't remember the name of that game, but that was like a really big.
The Mountain King.
In the Hall of the Mountain. Well, Goblin sounds like in the Hall of, you know, same amount of.
They're trolls. It's yes, close. Yeah.
Which was obviously an Endeavor was a big campaign. So.
Right. So for us, we know Endeavor is an outlier. It had 8,000 people who were showing that they wanted to have the game before it even was a twinkle in our eye. So we knew that there was going to be something special about that we might one day be able to replicate. But right now we know, you know, we're a growing company. That is not a possibility. So I never set my sights on what Endeavor has done. I would like that to happen, and we're trending toward that. Whenever I run a Kickstarter campaign, I look at the campaign before, and my goal is just to match that with money and with backer count. not because I think we're going to get exactly the same backers as last time, but I think that's attainable based on what our experiences have been. So at the point we're at right now, this would have been our 8th Kickstarter campaign between KTBG and Burnt Island Games, and we had different expectations of it because of In the Hall of the Mountain King, and it was received so nicely. I mean, there are so many factors that I think put it where it was, and there was nothing wrong with where we were. And the trajectory for us at that point would have been, we probably would have come out with about 150,000 Canadian dollars, and that's very fantastic for a lot of companies. But that's not what our goal was. It wasn't about where we were going to end up for money wise. There were a lot of other factors, but that's just a little bit about that. We can talk about that after.
Sure. And so, okay. And so you get to this. So presumably, I mean, Kickstarter page isn't ever ready, and there's always some things you would have done more of or done differently. But I mean, you launched, right? So presumably you thought, all right, we're in good shape, or we're in good enough shape, or however you want to think about it. What were the initial indicators for you? Like when did you guys start? When did somebody say, hey, we should talk about this? Like what was it? Was it, was it 2 hours in, you're like, whoa, or was it was straight immediately?
It was, every creator who has a following initially in their first hour or 2 hours, like they skyrocket, because all of those people who do love your games and want to continue backing your games are there for you. And we got pretty close to our goal. I think, when we went to sleep at midnight on the first night, we were at $38,000 Canadian, and I was certain that we were going to wake up to having funded. And then by the next day, hopefully to get to about $60,000 to $70,000 Canadian. Well, our overnight, which is usually a couple hundred backers, ended up being maybe like 50 or 60 backers. And we knew when we woke up in the morning that there was something wrong. It was different. It felt different.
And then to translate that just for a second, just to make sure I understand. So you're saying the people, the fans of your stuff, your sense was that they did show up, and then after that didn't happen.
That's correct.
And so, okay, so what now to start pulling it apart, as you've been sort of digging into all the decisions and thinking about it, like, what are the things that you felt, are, well, what did you do wrong, or what do you think wasn't handled correctly, or, what's your assessment at this point?
Well, we felt pretty good about the way the Kickstarter page looked. Josh, who's our graphic designer, usually does a pretty good job. I mean, and when we launched, we knew there were some things that were going to change throughout the campaign. So that really wasn't a concern for us. But what we started hearing after was, I never even knew about this game. How did it slip through the cracks? Why didn't I see that it existed through my normal channels? And we did not do anything different this time than we usually do. And so from our perspective, the money was spent on marketing, print media, digital media, and all of the copy that our marketing manager did. We felt like it was everywhere. We thought we had reached so many places, and for the first time, I felt like we really had a good handle on that. Well, it turns out that maybe we didn't have a good handle on that, and maybe it wasn't posted in enough Facebook groups or showed up enough, with whatever Facebook uses to choose the different ads that you see, because we had ads up for a couple months already. sometimes you, Edo, you have games, and I see them all the time because I follow you. And so that's the first thing that, when you post something, it shows up for me right away. People who don't know me or are not friends with me or isn't following Burnt Island Games might not necessarily see our stuff right away. So I think one of the things that we're going to need to do is to focus a little bit more on how we're going to get a broader reach. And I think that has to come from digital media, because at the moment, as you know, we don't have any conventions to go to. Our big convention was supposed to be Origins. We were launching right after Origins. And every time we bring a new game to a convention, we end up with a lot of backers that came to us from playtesting our game at the convention, by seeing it on our tables, by coming over and saying, "Ooh, that's beautiful. What is this?" That is a huge piece that's been missing. We never had it at a convention. We had a box at a convention, but we never had the game for anyone to play. And in a grassroots way, I believe that that's really, really important.
I mean, I mean, I certainly think it's important. Ultimately, right? Like, had you been in I mean, I don't know if it's going to tell me on this page. Is it? It doesn't. Oh yeah, no, it does. Oh, that's right. That's right. Of course it does. Let's say you had a little over 650 backers on the title.
You can say the number. It's okay.
It's fine. But 650 people. If you're at a convention like Origins and you're at a tabletop, when you say 650, 650 people are gonna pass the table in a day, right? And so when in some way, because so if at day 2 you were looking at 1,200 backers, if you're looking at 1,400 backers, it probably would have been like, oh, this is going pretty well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. What I wanted to see was not just, and I love them, the people who love our games, they're amazing, and we are so happy and proud to be doing this with them. It's great to have them, but we need to see growth, because if those are the only people that are going to be backing our campaigns, and we've done not a good job at getting the word out there, those are the only people who are going to back our campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so the interesting thing is, so I was listening to, I'm sure we'll go through other points, but just on this first one, I was listening to the reach and marketing one, and I guess the question I have is, so it's really easy to look at your team that traditionally has a really nice, consistent presence at conventions, and at least as far as the ones I've been to, I seem to see you there. So I'm going to assume, because I'm pretty and an active playtest and good results from that not being a part of the equation, especially you saying actually the game was never ever shown at a convention, essentially, other than like it's coming one day. There's a huge gap in that, especially since your games tend to be rich, complex. We're talking about the Burnt Island ones,
right?
Right. Rich, complex, multifaceted games that take, engagement and joy. Like, I look at that game. I just played I did a review for Atlantis Rising, and it just reminds me of like, oh my God, there's so much stuff going on in here. It's like, that kind of richness, right? And so, but but that clearly wasn't there. For the marketing, you felt like you did it about the same. Would you say, was your spend comparable? Because if you're running ads on Facebook, if people are seeing them.
Right. No, we spent more money. I spent way more money on this campaign than I've spent on any other campaign.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the reason we did that is because we don't have convention presence. And, we saved a little bit of money on marketing from in conventions, because I usually do some of that as well. So I took all of that money and I put it into the front end of the campaign. But again, like, still in the same circles, still, with the same audiences. I've tested many. I feel like at this point I know which audiences are going to respond. And so, you either saw it or you didn't see it. It's unfortunate. Like, I wish I had a recipe to make everybody that is interested in the Gate board be able to see our marketing, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I certainly saw it, but obviously, you know, we're well connected on Facebook.
Exactly.
Well, so on the marketing side, right, as you're thinking about, because I've sort of taken the a different approach in that, I, obviously I've had a couple, really, um, larger successes, with say Skull Hollow, but
Yep.
generally speaking, when it comes to my more, family, but just the natural, the stuff I do with Steve and Beth, and just Tori, I sort of have more embraced the size of my audience a little bit, and sort of been comfortable with it. And so at that point, I think I find it really hard to recoup marketing dollars. Like,
Right.
because if you think about it as money that you're going to take out of the profit, right? It just that it requires a really big funding goal to do it. And so
Right.
as I've seen less and less performance, from digital marketing, I've sort of I've done the opposite. Like, rather than doubling down, I've been like, I'm just going to save my money and then go a little smaller.
Right.
Um, but I also these are smaller games. But I guess my question is, when you think about that, like, in terms of ways to spend, right? There's Facebook ads. There's the work of going. I'm going to go into every group on the internet and post a picture of it, right? There's that piece. But then in terms of spend, there's sort of Facebook ads. Then there's sort of off Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or BGG. BGG probably being particular, and then, you essentially have content marketing, and content, creators who do paid work. Um, like, what is your, percentages of that? Like, was it predominantly, like, how did you, like, essentially what categories did you spend on marketing?
Well, those were basically the categories. In terms of digital, the most we did was on Facebook, and that also goes to Instagram as well. Um, and we have done 7 weeks of posting in different groups, different parts of the content, getting people interested. We've had a lot of people sign up to our newsletter for that, which is really amazing. But like, off of digital, it's like it's virtually impossible. Um, we have had ads in Casual Game Insider for a year almost. That this game was coming to Kickstarter. Uh, the reach for that I don't think is so large, but if my half-page ad gets 100 eyes on it that are interested in it, that's enough, right? Um, like the fact that we've had the game on Tabletop Simulator has been amazing for us, because we've been able to play the game with different content creators that just want to play it. They're just interested in playing it, and then they'll post about it in different groups.
Sure.
And they'll write articles, which, leading up to the campaign, there were probably about 10 to 12 articles written and posts on Facebook, which was very, very nice. But typically I would boost that kind of stuff. I didn't do that this time. I was waiting until we got to, the middle crunch of the
Sure.
campaign to start boosting that stuff. So,
And do you feel, so how much do you feel that there was any, so I mean, since you were in a lot of places, and you're looking for more places, and obviously there wasn't the connection, but do you feel there was any, like, in terms of the value proposition, or the elevator pitch of the game, or like the hook, or do you feel like there was anything that needs to be done in terms of, like, it could be the ad reach, but also whether or not the ads are resonating with the people seeing them, right?
right. And so, obviously, we are going through the campaign with a fine-tooth comb. And the thing that keeps coming up for us, and we've talked to some other people in the industry, and one being Eric Lang, who's a good friend of ours, who has been incredibly helpful for us. He thought, listening to the video and looking at the campaign page, that the game was quite different than it presented itself in the video and on the page. And so we need to think about what have we been doing to communicate what this game is. And the thing that keeps coming up for us is this is like a really nice, gritty, like a Ameritrash kind of game that looks like a Euro on the table, and it is not in any way a Euro at all. And so one of the main reasons we decided that canceling the campaign is to think about how are we going to articulate to people what this game actually is, because there are so many parts of it that don't exist in other games. It's been difficult for us to actually communicate that. Some of the mechanisms, like I've at least never seen them. None of our team has seen them, and we've played a lot of games between the three of us as a team. So that is definitely a thing that we are going to be working on for the next couple of months until we relaunch in September, is communicating to people what this game is and why they should want to back it.
Yeah, I think, when you make a game that's different than is out there, or sometimes falls to the side of standard genres or between standard genres, it can be difficult to communicate why it's good and fun, and people can, it makes it hard for folks to sort of associate it with like a game that they like, that they, that like can ground it into like, oh, it's like that, but it's this, but that. A game that we struggled with for sure was The Siblings Trouble, because it's sort of this cooperative storytelling card game that's like has a lot of role-playing elements, but also like, and it just, and it never like a lot people who got it, a very well received game, but it didn't really connect into the types of genres people usually know and expect and use. Right. So that was a really interesting one. We've been going. So okay, we talked about there's this sort of reach conventions, and it sounds like the answer there is because we're certainly not going to be in a convention between now and September.
That's right.
So does that mean it's digital, and then are you going heavy into the tabletop stuff and like that kind of?
So in order to reach as many people as we possibly can, within the next week or two, we'll be releasing our tabletop simulator version of the game. And it's also this week going to be up on Tabletopia. And so the goal for us is going to be to invite people to come play it. There will be 3 to 4 sessions a week that we'll be running to teach the game to people. But they can play it on their own as well if they want to read the rules and do that on their own. So we're going to try to reach as many people that way as we possibly can. It's going to be a free game to play digitally, and hopefully that will convert some people. And unfortunately, I'm a very big proponent of not running Kickstarter campaigns in the summer, and it's basically been my rule for a very long time. Number one, there are many fewer people at their computers. And number two, I don't want to run a Kickstarter campaign in the summer. I want to be with my children. We decided to do this. And I think that was a bit of a mistake. But we also didn't give enough time, knowing that we didn't have these conventions, to have people playing the game. And we really need to do that.
Yeah, ultimately there's a lot of stuff that you set up when you have a date, but the few times that I've pushed or otherwise delayed, I've felt, never really was for worse for the game, right? Because in some regards, you get more awareness out there, and then it gets to simmer a little bit and sit in the consciousness a little bit more. Yeah. So that's the approach there. Then in terms of, it sounds like in terms of the messaging and helping the game, the Kickstarter page and resonating, that's going to come through just refinement and getting feedback and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Would you say there were other areas or anything else that you've looked back on and said we should have handled that part differently, or we could have done that? Like does that encapsulate the things that you thought were most troubling, or were there other things that?
I think that there were other things, but I think those were the main issues.
Right.
To me, any feedback from backers and even people who aren't backers is very important. So, we've had people who have said to us, and this is really hard for me to say out loud, but this is the reality. We had one person who said to us, I don't think your intentions are as you said, and I used to love Burnt Island games, and now you have a black mark on you, and I'm going to tell all of my friends not to back your games. And, whatever we did.
Because of the canceling?
Yes, whatever we did to offend that person, I apologize. But the reality for us is it's important to hear that feedback. And
Sure.
If that's something you want to say to us, then please do it. Say it nicely, please. But I need to hear that stuff. I take every single bit of feedback, positive or constructive. Please be constructive if that's what you're going to do. I take it very, very seriously. I bring all of it to my team. We have discussions about it. It's important because if we are not pleasing the people who are potential backers, then they're not going to back our game. So I need to think about that. And we need to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good part. And actually what I would say, because I'm going to be doing all this linking, perhaps for folks who are still on and still listening, and it's a small audience of folks, but it may not have a perfect overlap with the Burnt Island game folks. Would be perhaps in the comments or connecting on Facebook or otherwise, if you were to look at the campaign today, and you can go to the link, and it's the cancel campaign, but it's essentially what that page is essentially what it was when you launched, right? Give or take a little bit. One, did you hear about it, right? Like, oh yeah, I remember Into Deep, like it's a game that I was expecting, or I saw the ads or whatever. And then two, why didn't you back, or what turned you on, what turned you off, or if you've never seen it and you're seeing it for the first time, what's your reaction? What looks appealing, what doesn't? Mm-hmm. And then just mechanically, when you cancel a campaign, is this the first one you've canceled?
Yes.
Oh, the first for everything. I haven't had this opportunity yet.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because, our first campaign did like $29,000 Canadian, which is, I don't know, $5 or $6 US. Right. And it's only built since then. And, we're not like millionaires for making these Kickstarter campaigns. They're all passion projects for us. I want to pay myself a salary, and I want to make good games. And that's really all that we want to do. But we also want people to be so happy with the product we make. And people who know KTBG and people who know Burnt Island Games know that they're getting a really solid, really, really rich game. Components are top-notch quality. I want people to be happy with what they see in the box. I want the game to come off of the shelf more than once. And so, I forgot where I was going with this.
It's fine. I mean, you're passionate about what you're doing. I think you were just talking about some of the emotions around what it feels like to cancel.
Right. So, when we canceled, the number one thing for us was like, are all of the people who have backed our Kickstarter campaigns since the beginning, are they going to be disappointed in us? Or are they going to, are they going to make the decision to say, well, maybe this company isn't for us? But ultimately, we didn't do this for them. We didn't do this for us. We did it for us as a whole. So for us as a company who needs to thrive in a time that's been very difficult, and also us as in terms of we want our backers to be happy. We want them to love what they have on the shelf and what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, you're always going to have a few folks that feel strongly one way or the other. But at the same time, I don't think that anyone is, my experience, not from campaigns that I've run, but just from watching campaigns over the years, is that there's very little. I mean, other than most of the pain and suffering is on the folks who work to get the Kickstarter up and ready and all those things. As far as folks who are backers, they're excited, they're interested in the title, but it's not like you took any of their money.
No, we didn't. No. That's like the it's so interesting to me that people get so passionate enough to like say that they're upset with us for doing it, and no money came out of their, like, I don't know how much time they invest. Maybe they invested a lot of time in our campaign and really was rooting for us and sharing with all their friends. But it's interesting to see how passionate people get about that part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think, there are a number of reasons that folks can be frustrated or feel like, well, then why didn't you have a bigger goal? I mean, there's a number of parts to it. But again, I think in aggregate, that's a very small number of folks that sort of have that reaction versus the, oh, well, hopefully you can figure out whatever the problems were. Part of it.
And really, like, it's really, for the most part, if you look at the campaign and you look at the comments and you look at the comments on our one update that we've had so far, every single backer that took the time to comment said that they support our choice and they'll be back in September. And, it told me after we did that we actually did the right thing. And I
Sure.
felt energized by that. And so for the most part, I only ever feel support from the people who are around us. And I want that to be clear as well. Like, it's usually amazing. So
Right.
Yeah.
Well, good. And I think that's a good outcome. And then in terms of, so if you go through this process, it is a new camp. So this thing's sort of etched in stone, fortunate for better or for worse. And then you start a new campaign. Can it have the same name? How does that work?
So we're calling it, no, it can't have the same name. It has to have a different name. We're calling it Into Deep Reboot.
Oh, sure.
Which, fits in with the theme, which is nice. And, we have that remind me on launch button sitting there waiting, and the campaign's been approved already, but obviously we're still working on it and tweaking things. So we're hoping that the title of the game is exactly the same, just the title of the campaign has changed.
Sure.
When you search for it, it's still In Too Deep. You can find it that
Cool.
way. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, so I will try and link the old campaign and then the new one for people to follow along.
Thank you.
And then the old interview. Was that a year ago, 2 years ago? I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think it's maybe 3 years.
Yeah. I know I also interviewed Josh at some point or another.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Cool. Well, so we've gone a pretty long time, covered a lot of different parts of this. But I just and really I appreciate, and on behalf of myself, but anyone else who's watching, right? And when I was curious if you'd be up for doing the Q&A and the discussion, right? It's not like a topic most people want to talk about, right? So I appreciate you coming on and talking about it.
But I mean, even since the beginning, I have appreciated all of the people who have shared with me, and you being one of them. I know I've asked you questions over the years, and you've been really helpful. But I just feel like I've never felt like there's competition in this industry. Maybe wrongly, but I just don't feel the competition. I feel like I want everyone to be successful, and I do as much as I can to help other people the way I've been helped by the industry as well. So even though it is not the best topic, and I would, like to be talking right now about how the campaign is doing amazingly, and we're just so happy with it. It's an important topic, and I don't want other people to be afraid to say, hey, we made some mistakes, let's fix these and do it better next time. I just think that's really important for people to hear.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your time, and thanks everyone for watching, and I look forward to checking out the game in September, or just saying you could send me a version if you have a copy.
I think we're probably going to do that.
I'll take a look at it. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Edo.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.